Welcome everyone to Dax Reacts, and today I am reacting to, I don't know exactly what it's called. It was which animated movie villain would win Squid Game. Now when I was reacting to like Pikachu on Acid or Racist Mario or something like that, I saw this one in the on YouTube, and I'm like, that looks actually pretty interesting. I think I'm going to try that myself. Try and watch that and react to that and see. I don't know anything about it, just like the other one I watched. The other one I watched wasn't very entertaining to me, at least. I didn't understand anything. But this one, I think I can quite understand. So, how about we click on the little... Yep, there we go. And, let's get to watching it.
We're taking 50 of the most iconic animated movie villains and running them through the Squid Game. Only one villain will walk away with all that money. So let's introduce our contestants.
Welcome to the Squid Game, villains. We're excited for everyone to...
And by the way, it's like 24 minutes long. So that's probably how long my video is going to be.
play.
Today's roster of players is as follows. From Disney animated movies, we have Scar, Ursula, Shan Yu, Cruella de Vil, Gaston, Captain Hook, Jafar, Hades, Maleficent, Yzma, Dr. Facilier, Lady Tremaine, Professor Ratigan, Judge Claude Frollo, and Governor Ratcliffe. Our Pixar villains include Syndrome, Charles Muntz, Sid Phillips, Hopper, Lotso Huggenbear, Stinky Pete, Ernesto de la Cruz, Chick Hicks, Randall Boggs, and Henry Waternoose. Our players hailing from DreamWorks.
Alright, hold on. Is Chick Hicks really a villain? I mean, I guess he kind of knocked out the king, so the queen kind of had to save his butt. But I don't really think he's a villain. I just think it's more of like I don't really think he's a villain.
Works animation include Lord Farquaad, Fairy Godmother, Rumpelstiltskin, Prince Charming, Vantra, Tai Lung, Lord Shen, Kai, Jack Horner, Titan, Pitch Black, Grimmel the Grizzly, Drago Bloodfist, and Professor Marmalade. Our 5 players from Illumination Studios are Gru, Vector, Baltazar Brat, Scarlet Overkill, and Bowser. And last but not least, our final villains from Sony Pictures Animation include Abraham Van Helsing, Tank Evans, Chester V, Kingpin, Doc Ock, and The Spot. But let's familiarize ourselves with the rules.
The following are the ground rules in this Squid Game. Number 1, no outside allies or sidekicks. Number 2, no outside weapons.
This is gonna be
with
interesting.
the sole exception of any equipment needed to survive. Number 3, no magic. Number 4, natural abilities are allowed.
And that about sums it up, so let's stop delaying the inevitable and get to the good stuff.
The first game today is red light, green light.
Red light, green light.
You may move forward when it shouts green light. Stop when it shouts red light. If your movement is detected afterwards, you will be eliminated.
This is a game that's all about speed, agility, and sharp listening skills, but also calmness under pressure. Right off the bat, Chick Hicks shouldn't have any issues in the first round. I mean, just look at him. Not only is Chick Hicks a race car, but he's also a professional race car. And as a result, he'd cross that finish line pretty quick. And then a couple other Pixar villains were made for this challenge. Lotso Huggenbear and Stinky Pete. Toys in the Toy Story universe have what seems to be some kind of instinct to instantly fall unconscious when there are people around. And even if this is a bit of a different context, they'd still be doing what comes most naturally to them. Vantra would definitely have the easiest time out of all of DreamWorks' villains. Since she doesn't have any human limitations to worry about, and being a robot, she's pretty well versed in following orders. Villains with battle experience would have a similarly easy time, like Tai Lung, Shan Yu, Syndrome Bowser, and our main man Gru. But sadly, not everyone is on equal footing here. We do have a few first-round eliminations to talk about. The first contestant to go in 50th place is Governor Ratcliffe.
Player eliminated.
Now, you might think this is because Ratcliffe isn't in the best physical shape for the challenge, but that's the least of his concern. You see, when Radcliffe entered the scene, he saw something that bothered him right away. They not only allowed people of different races, but different species to compete against him.
I told you those savages couldn't be trusted.
Naturally, Radcliffe saw this as an outrage and immediately demanded to speak to the manager of the competition, and he didn't get to do that. Lady Tremaine seems like she could also fall into that "may I speak to the manager" category, but in her case, she'd be more likely to lose on the sheer basis that she's an old lady who relies on others to do most stuff for her. She isn't exactly the athletic type, and her sense of entitlements would probably make her feel no need to rush. Either that, or she'd just straight up panic. And on the topic of panicking, Gaston's showdown with the Beast proved that he doesn't have too much in the way of composure. So the moment actual danger was shown, he'd be on his knees begging for mercy, which would definitely fall on deaf ears.
Player eliminated.
Some of the non-human characters...
I don't really think Gaston would lose. I think Gaston would have... I think he would have done good, honestly. I don't know. It's pretty fast and agile.
Are also at a disadvantage here, but Hopper has the worst hand of the bunch. In a world of bugs, sure, Hopper is a pretty terrifying threat, but in the context of a huge competition like this, well, Hopper is a bug. And he doesn't even have a silly outfit or anything to hide behind like Ratigan. The dude's just a normal fascist grasshopper, so if he didn't get caught by the cameras, he'll almost definitely end up trampled.
Player eliminated.
And
That's
our
true.
last three losses return to the realm of human contestants. Titan, Lord Farquaad, and Abraham Van Helsing. These three would all be eliminated because, for various reasons, they aren't physically fit enough to get past that finish line.
Oh yeah, because he's
Farquaad
short.
counts on others to do his dirty work since his strength usually falls short. Titan was only strong when he got gifted superpowers, and his total lack of composure would make his poor physical shape a sure death sentence. Finally, Van Helsing is literally in a weird iron lung type robot suit with parts that are constantly moving. So even if he played the game perfectly well, he'd probably lose by accident.
43 out of 50 players remain. Let's move on to the next game, Honeycomb. Players must cut out the shape from their cookies. Those who break their cookie or run out of time will be eliminated.
Okay, I already know what's gonna happen here. Chick Hicks is gonna be one of them because he's a car. His wheels can't do that.
The Honeycomb game requires patience and a steady hand.
I forgot
Too much
the other ones.
shaking or pressure could cause a fatal break. As such, our contestants will need to have enough focus to poke out their shape without accidentally breaking it. This is one challenge where small stature is a blessing, so the first sure victory goes to Ratigan, the world's greatest rat. I mean, criminal mind. Considering how Ratigan is a mouse, and a quite cunning one at that, it's safe to say that he would have the precision needed to cut out a shape from the cookie. And he's surprisingly composed even when doing horrific things, so provided nobody calls him a rat during this round, he'll come out unscathed for sure. Stinky Pete and Captain Hook would also come out on top in this round, since both of them are well versed in using sharp objects in everyday life. This challenge should come as second nature to them. The same can be said for the contestants who have a lot of experience with physical scientific research, like Doc Ock and The Spot, both of whom contributed to the discovery of interdimensional travel. We'll also say that Syndrome has a pretty easy time here as well, since he's made some pretty impressive inventions over the years, showing that he's got some serious tactical skills. And call me crazy, but I think they could probably manage to cut a fortune cookie into a star. Finally, there's one surprising candidate we have to mention. Bowser sails quite smoothly through this round. It might be shocking since he's a gigantic fire-breathing turtle, but need I remind you how elegantly this man plays the piano? Piano takes some precision and control, and Bowser's
Sure.
skills prove that he has what it takes to cut out that cookie into a heart for his beloved Peaches, 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 Peaches. But now let's move on to the characters who couldn't quite make the cut. The first one to go this round is Chick Hicks.
I told you. I called it. I said he was going to.
Eliminated.
Chick Hicks, he doesn't have arms or legs. He's a sentient car. There is quite literally nothing he could do here.
Kachika, kachika, yeah! Now that's what I'm talking about. Hey, how come the only one celebrating is me, huh?
Unless he ran over the cookie and it just happened to break into the shape he needed. But that is some disbelief even we won't suspend. Scar's departure might break some hearts, given how popular of a villain he is.
Life's not fair, is it?
But as prepared as he may be, Scar is still a wild animal, be it a highly intelligent one. As such, he doesn't really have the ability to use a little needle to carve out whatever shape he needs.
He has
and
claws.
I highly doubt his claws or fangs would be more precise. Short-lived the non-king.
Player eliminated.
Next, due to his short temper, Balthazar Brat is definitely not making it past this round.
Yeah, I can see that.
Eliminated.
I wouldn't even be surprised if this guy just ate the cookie upon entering, really. But even if he didn't, he wouldn't be able to cut it out without his gadgets. The same can be said for Tank Evans,
Player eliminated.
who would
Oh,
gladly
yeah.
accept the cookie as his trophy, rightfully earned for winning red light, green light. It's a total misunderstanding of the rules, but the guards allowed him to walk out with it anyway, just because he's so funny. Finally, a few brute strength candidates would prove themselves a bit too strong for their own good here. Drago Bloodfist comes to mind since he fully believes that power and dominance are everything, so the moment that cookie looked at him funny, he'd have no hesitation to smash it into pieces.
Tear them apart.
And, okay, I feel really bad about this one, but while Tai Lung is undeniably a skilled fighter, he doesn't have the restraint to succeed in this challenge. Nor does
Are
Kai,
you
actually.
serious?
Players eliminated.
I mean, you guys saw how quickly he attacked a whole village of pandas, right?
Seriously?
The last losers of this round are both Pixar villains. First is Charles Muntz,
Player eliminated.
a tunnel-visioned old man who's clearly losing his mind. While it's
Oh,
impressive
yeah.
that he managed to fight atop an airship at his age, he doesn't seem like the type who's stable enough to thrive in non-aggressive competition. And finally, as bad as we feel for this one, Sid Phillips' age and penchant for destruction
Player eliminated.
would be a seriously awful combo for this round. But considering what comes next, it's arguably a mercy that he's eliminated here.
34 players remain. We hope you all get a good night's sleep.
But we all know that isn't happening, because
Midnight
it's time
Brawl.
for the Midnight Brawl. Now, this unofficial challenge is made for the bad guys. Lack of food and sleep, plus the stress of staying alive, can drive any person to the point of violence, and in this game, it's every villain for themselves. To survive this game, a person must be either strong enough to fight or clever and sneaky enough to hide. We'll start with the heavy hitters. Bowser wouldn't have any problem making short work of anyone dumb enough to attack him.
You just don't know when to quit.
With maxed out attack and defense, this Koopa King wouldn't have a problem surviving the night.
Not at all. Not at all.
Even if he'd definitely be hungry by the time it's over. Similarly, I don't think anyone is going to mess around with Shan Yu. Even Bowser would probably want to stay clear of him. Some other less terrifying heavy hitters include Gru and Kingpin, but some villains would need to use more underhanded.
Kingpin would thrive in the night. You see how big he is? When he was fighting Spider-Man, he like crushed him. He could face Bowser. He could beat Bowser.
Tactics to escape their doom here. Plenty of villains fit that bill. Hades, Rumpelstiltskin, and Dr. Facilier are particularly good at making strong alliances when they need to,
So, here's the deal.
even just to achieve their own personal ambitions, so surely they could pull out those talents to save their own lives.
That is very true. Rumpelstiltskin formed one with Shrek and then turned against him with the contract signing thing. He didn't really form an alliance. He just kind of like made his own like group of witches or something like that. Dr. Facilier, however, he didn't really form any alliances either. Wait, when did he form an alliance? Like, yeah, he talked to the prince and the prince's right-hand man, and then he turned on them. But I don't really know if you count that as an alliance. And then who was the other one? Hades. I don't know.
So, we got ourselves a deal.
It's kind of
Finally,
shaky.
for those who would need to hide. Syndrome, who was able to systematically exterminate multiple superheroes without being caught until years later. Plus, Lotso Huggenbear, Professor Marmalade, and Ratigan are all just the right size for finding the best hiding spots, and being the very embodiment of darkness and nightmares, Pitch Black would find this less of a challenge and more of a regular Tuesday evening. Finally, Randall's chameleon-esque transformation skills would make sure that he'd be one of the most effective assassins and hiders of the bunch. Plenty of bad guys were well prepared for that round, but not all of them. Being a sea witch stripped of her powers, Ursula has probably made more than her fair share of enemies by now.
Player eliminated.
Not to mention she's been out of water for a while, so she's probably pretty exhausted. As such, she's both an easy pick for players to target and a smart one. On the topic of villains who have made plenty of enemies, it's safe to say that Prince Charming and Vector would have made themselves fairly unpopular by this point.
Okay, that's true, but also Prince Charming doesn't need popularity. He's got a sword and he knows how to use it. I'd say if you were to eliminate him, I'd say eliminate him in the tug of war since he's not very strong, you know? But he would have survived. He would have definitely survived the night. As for Vector, yeah, I can agree there though.
Players eliminated.
To make matters worse, they both rely on weapons and gadgets, respectively, on their best days, so being totally out of their element would make them slim picking.
Oh, right. There's no powers and probably no weapons, I think he said too at the beginning, so he wouldn't have a sword. I take back what I said.
Stinky Pete could have a shot at surviving this round, alongside Lotso, Ratigan, and Marmalade. He's small enough to fit into the smallest hiding places around. But unfortunately, he's definitely the least deceptive of that bunch. And he'd go from an ally to a victim pretty quickly as a result.
Player eliminated.
Finally, some of the more elderly competitors wouldn't have the strength to stand against greater threats. Claude Frollo, Yzma, Chester V, and Jafar
Players eliminated.
would be lost without their usual weapons, magic, and allies.
Good morning, players. After last night's brawl, 26 players remain. Please prepare for our next
Tug
game.
of war.
Tug of War.
Now, unlike the actual Squid Game, we aren't going to assign characters to specific teams. Instead, we're simply going to judge them based on their abilities and likelihood to survive. Even weaker players have a shot at surviving if they coordinate properly with stronger players. That means that manipulative minds like Maleficent, Dr. Facilier, and Hades wouldn't have much of an issue getting people on their side. Sure, by this point, everyone's going to be more skeptical of each other, but these three in particular are very good at making their victims seem more like business partners or even friends. But for the truly weak characters, they need to rely on pity.
Oh dear, what an awkward situation.
And that's where Lotso and Professor Marmalade come in clutch. I mean, who could possibly leave behind the cute little guinea pig or the big ol' hugging teddy bear? I mean, then again, you have to be a total freaking idiot to be on your life or death tug-of-war team, but we'll assume that they just eke by.
Well, that's terrifying. Let's try something simpler.
And still, brute strength goes a long way. Bowser, Shan Yu, Gru, Jack Horner, and the relentless Lord Shen all have some kind of experience with war or large-scale fights in general, so they'd certainly be seen as worthy allies to have. And finally, the literal monsters, Randall and Mr. Waternoose, would be able to make it through this round, although in Randall's case, it's only because of his alliance with Waternoose, who has, like, a ton of legs that would come in handy in this challenge.
Yeah.
But let's go over the eliminations. As we mentioned earlier, this is where people are probably going to be more critical of who they work with. A fact that Professor Ratigan is going to have to learn the very hard way.
Player eliminated.
Ratigan doesn't have a nice bone in his body. Unlike Lotso and Marmalade, he never even tries to come off as a good guy to manipulate others.
And aren't you proud to be a part of it?
You did right there.
You have to respect his honesty, really. The dude's pure evil, but he's also a mouse. And that means he wouldn't be useful as a teammate, so it's safe to say he's gonna get last pick of the teams. Cruella de Vil and Captain Hook fit similarly into that
'cause of
plain
his
awful
hook.
category. For Cruella, she's not strong enough to justify teaming up with the creepy old lady who likes skinning puppies.
Can't be. It's impossible.
And for Captain Hook, well, he's not that bad compared to some of the others, but the guy has a hook for a hand, and that would make it kind of difficult for him to contribute his full strength. Sorry, Hook. Finally, Rumpelstiltskin, Pitch Black, and Grimmel the Grizzly all fit into the category of characters who aren't physically strong enough to recruit, and are simultaneously too shady to trust, so with that unfortunate combination, they're gonna have to say goodbye to make way for our final 20.
20 players remain.
In fact, let's review who's left. Our remaining players are Hades, Shan Yu, Maleficent, Dr. Facilier, Syndrome, Lotso, Randall, Mr. Waternoose,
Gotta try and remember that.
Ernesto de la Cruz, Fairy Godmother, Lord Shen, Ventra, Jack Horner, Professor Marmalade, Gru, Scarlet Overkill, Bowser, Kingpin, Doc Ock, and Spot.
All contestants, please prepare for the next game.
Marbles.
You will play the game of your choice with your
I wonder how they're gonna do this one because you have to like, don't you have to like guess even or odd? I don't remember exactly what marbles was.
Partner. The player to take all 10 marbles wins. The loser will be eliminated.
Marbles is an interesting one, at least in the context of Squid Game. There are multiple ways for pairs of players to play their marble game. They could focus on accuracy or how far they can roll their marble, or they can simply guess how many marbles are in their opponent's hand. These games often rely on skill or luck. Of course, you could always go the underhanded route and choose the smartest option, manipulation. Being an absolute master of sleight of hand, Dr. Facilier won't have any problems with this one. Sure, he may not be able to contact his friends on the other side right now, but he's still a skillful gambler who can easily charm his way into conning a sucker out of their spot in the game.
That is true. Dr. Facilier is a con artist. I think Gru could be able to as well. He did trick that lady into getting the girls. Or the girls. Bowser, I believe as well. I'm trying to remember the contestants so hard. It's very difficult. We'll just watch.
Speaking of sleight of hand, the Spot's body has, like, multiple vortexes all over it. He could easily hide some of his marbles, or his opponents, anytime he wants, without technically breaking the no magic rule. Clever guy.
Hi. Sorry to bug you. I know you're busy. Sorry.
What do you want?
Now, if we're going to talk about
I don't really know
characters who
much
are just
about
plain
that.
good at lying, Ernesto de la Cruz is near the top of the list in that regard. This guy managed to convince a whole country that he, for generations, was this amazing musician, when in actuality, he was just a thief who betrayed his best friend and stole his music. Winning a game like this would be a piece of cake for such a treacherous snake. There are more characters who would do pretty well in this game, but let's move on to the eliminations.
Don't forget they killed him too.
Want to spoil the surprise. First up, this is where Hades falls from the river Styx into the river Marbles.
Player eliminated.
Hades' godhood isn't going to help him much here, and my best bet is that he'll lose the same way he did to Hercules in the movie, by deciding to bet it all on a game he's convinced is a surefire win, only for it to spectacularly blow up in his face. Bowser is another villain whose pride would be his downfall.
Really?
Player eliminated.
And on top of that, so would his naivete. Seriously, after everything Bowser put Peach and her people through,
Love really makes a guy come out of his shell.
he still genuinely believed she'd marry him, or at least he kinda did. He may be strong, but this Koopa King is no genius. In fact, he's downright delusional, so whoever got him as a partner would just have to stroke that ego a little bit to get by. Syndrome is another fiery, red-headed monster and equally screwed. You just know this guy would be way too cocky for his own good.
Oh, come on! You gotta admit this is cool!
And he'd only catch himself once it was already too late. Shen Yu would almost certainly end up pitted against someone way smarter than himself, and he'd learn the hard way that military strategies don't equal good gaming skills. Scarlet Overkill is definitely gone here, since she's a very highly paranoid person in general, so there's no doubt she'd overthink whatever game she ended up playing. The same can be said for Lord Shen.
Player eliminated.
Because the guy who committed genocide because of some random prophecy would not be able to handle this kind of pressure. After those two, our final Illumination villain, Gru, has met the end of his thrilling double life.
Player eliminated.
It's not because of a lack of skills or anything. Gru just doesn't seem like the type to ruthlessly get someone killed anymore. And he is a clumsy guy in general. Mr. Waternoose would count 1,000 marbles before he let himself lose, but with a slimy ally like Randall on his side, he definitely wouldn't have enough time to do that.
What are you doing? Take your hands off.
And at this point, most of the remaining villains are pretty brilliant, so it's a close call. We're gonna say that the final two eliminations this round go to Vantra, who, being a computer, could play a game in a very simplistic way, which would allow her opponent to point out some kind of loophole she missed, evil genie style, and Lotso, who, although he's able to manipulate others to let their guard down, would have definitely aroused some suspicion by now.
Player, you have been eliminated.
And his lack of intimidation would probably start playing against his favor as a result.
10 players remain. Please prepare for our next game, Glass Stepping Stones.
Now, this game is another tricky one for a hypothetical scenario, as much of this game relies on luck. There is one advantage to it, that being the advantage of going last, after most of the glass pieces have already been broken. As such, those who have a big enough ego to want to try a game first will likely seal their doom. For our version of the game, only 2 contestants will be lucky enough to move on, so we'll go through the rest in elimination order. Jack Horner would be the first to go.
Player eliminated.
He's definitely the type of guy who would cut in front of kids in line for an ice cream truck, so insisting on going first in any game would be a must for him. Ernesto de la Cruz and Maleficent have similar senses of entitlement, so if those two don't kill each other deciding who gets to go after Jack, they'd be in for a rude awakening afterwards.
Okay, I can see, I guess, her doing that maybe. But not Ernesto. Ernesto is a coward. I won't see him pushing through anybody to try and get to anything. I see him being the last one to try and guess, seeing as, you know, you don't want to die. So, I mean, I see him being a coward.
And at this point, the whole every villain for themselves thing is pumped full of steroids. So while Professor Marmalade might have gotten pretty far from his cuteness and manipulation tactics, he'd end up being used as, well, we'll call it a glass safety tester. Seriously, Kingpin is just gonna spike this dude like a football through one of those glass panels. As for the last 6, it's actually really hard to say, since these guys all seem perfectly capable of sitting back and watching others do their dirty work. So it all boils down to which characters are the most cool-headed and ruthless of the bunch. Fairy Godmother is more than likely the next one to go.
Player eliminated.
Since she's been around the block a few times and is more than willing to be the one to try and go ahead, proving that the others are wasting their time and panicking, while sadly for her, proving them right. And finally, with no permission to use their equipment or outside powers, it's safe to say that Doc Ock, Dr. Facilier, and the Spot are saying their goodbyes here as well, leaving the final 2 in the hands of 2 of the most underhanded characters in the whole roster.
2 players remain. Congratulations to Randall Boggs and Kingpin. You've made it to the final round. Please prepare for the Squid Game.
Okay, well that's pretty easy. Kingpin. He's gigantic and huge. He'd crush Randall.
In this game, 2 opponents must go up against one another, with one acting as a defender and the other as an attacker, with the attacker doing everything they can to reach the top of the court, or the squid's head, and touch it with their foot, with the defender doing whatever they can to stop them, or at least that's how Squid Game is traditionally played. Here though, it's more of a battle to the death type of deal. Now, both of these 2 contestants have some impressive feats. Kingpin, for one, is huge, even without superpowers, and even with the fact that he usually waits on others to do his bidding for him.
What are you waiting for? Finish it.
He can still throw hands when the need arises. Despite this, he's not without his agility, able to leap across buildings and vehicles and between dimensions, fighting Miles with superhuman strength. But then there's Randall, who, as you would expect from a reptilian monster dude, is slippery, always just barely out of reach. Good luck finding him too, since he can blend in with his surroundings like a chameleon. And he is very familiar with hiding in plain sight. He wouldn't win in a plain hand-to-hand combat match, but Randall would have a shot if he could just trip up Kingpin with his stealthy skills. On the surface, we would lean towards Randall for the win, but there's one thing about Kingpin that we think gives him leverage: observation skills. As the man who formerly ran the city from the shadows, Kingpin keeps tabs on everyone he needs to, and there's no doubt that such a forward-thinking dude would have taken some notes on his nemesis by now. Even with Randall's camouflage taken into account, Kingpin was observant enough to tell, almost intuitively, that the Prowler wasn't willing to kill Miles, and as a result, he didn't hesitate to kill him. If a shovel was enough to take Randall down, I think this dude's gigantic Roblox avatar body would do the trick.
Player eliminated. Congratulations to the player, Kingpin. You have won the Squid Game.
With all that said, Kingpin is the winner of our ultimate animated movie Squid Game, and his prize is an all-expense-paid trip to a dimension where his family is still alive, on the condition he stops killing people. Oh, you're wondering what Randall would have gotten if he'd won? Well, actually, now that I'm reviewing his request, I think it's best for all of us if we never ever speak of Randall's potential prize.
This is definitely going to be the next one I watch if I do. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty accurate. Oh, we're still drama contestants. Yeah, okay, so some of these I might even watch. I might watch, okay. yeah, so I guess I hope you guys enjoy the video, because I definitely did. My camera shut off again.